all members of this House remain gravely concerned about the situation in Syria and the ever-growing potential of the violence spilling into the neighbouring countries. That is why today the Government of Canada has announced that significant additional humanitarian assistance to provide food, water, housing and safety for people inside Syria and the neighbouring countries.
Foreign Affairs Minister John Baird in the House today on Canada's $25 million pledge to help Syrian refugees. Today's announcement doubles Canadian humanitarian assistance to help since the start of 2012 to $48 million. Is Canada choosing, though, humanitarian assistance over direct involvement? Is Canada becoming gun-shy post-Afghanistan or post-Libya? To new reports of Israeli airstrikes inside Syria, still unconfirmed, mean this conflict is now starting to spill over other borders just besides the Turkish one. Joining me now from the foyer of the House of Commons, Lois Brown, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of International Cooperation, the NDP Foreign Affairs critic Paul Dewar, and the Liberal International Cooperation critic Mark Eiking. Thanks all three of you for being there. Lois Brown, let me start with you. Canada has contributed $25 million to a total of $1.5 billion pledged internationally today to Syria. Is any of this money going to help end the conflict that's dragged on for over 2 years, 60,000 dead, or is it all simply humanitarian aid?
Well, thanks, Evan. And Canada has been an actor in the area for over a year. This is a second contribution that Canada has made, and we are working with our international partners. This money is going to help alleviate the suffering, the humanitarian suffering that we know has taken place for so many of the displaced Syrians. There are people in Syria who have left their homes, who are in need of water and food and shelter, and we're going to work with our international partners to ensure that they get what they need.
And the humanitarian needs are very evident, they're growing, and we appreciate that. And of course, Canada, as you say, has added more money to that. But Paul Dewar, should Canada be doing, I mean, there's a humanitarian side, but the violence continues. Can you separate these two in your view?
Oh, no, they're related. You know, first of all, we actually do welcome the investment that Canada's making, although we have been critical, and I still remain critical of the where it's going. It should, I think, also include Turkey. You probably know that Jordan has actually had to close its borders, and so Turkey is actually receiving disproportionately more of the refugees, and they've asked for help, and I think we should be assigning some of that support there, as well as the fast tracking of refugees who are in camps here in Canada. Minister Kenny was actually in Turkey, made an announcement, but sadly missed that we're talking about the urgent need for those who have fled Syria right now. The refugees he's talking about were people who are already in the queue from places like Iran and Iraq, and so we'd like to see that change. These refugees, the ones who are now joining the others, are fleeing the slaughter that's happening. And, I've said this before in the program, others have said it, nothing new. We have to engage with China and Russia to say, enough is enough. We've seen Russians flee Syria now. I heard Mr. Brahimi, the special envoy for the Secretary General the other day, saying he's not leaving. So, again, we need to give his office support and his mission support, because right now that's all we have.
Mark Eiking, what's your view in terms of this latest installment of money, and perhaps what else can or should Canada be doing in Syria?
Well, the money's fine, and I think Paul alluded to it. At the Foreign Affairs Committee, the Turkish ambassador stated that there's not enough engagement with the Turkish government on dealing with the refugees. There's over 700,000 refugees. Most of them are going into Turkey. But there's a couple other places where Canada could be a lot more stronger. Just recently, there was a declaration by the UN. 60 countries signed it, to be tough on the Assad regime, to put them in place to a tribunal in The Hague. Well, Canada didn't sign on with that. There's where they could have made strong action. Also, they got to be looking at what happens when this regime collapses. What are we going to be doing? Are we going to be there to help them with their democracy, rule of law? We should be doing a lot more of that. We didn't do it in Libya, and if we got to be ready. I mean, the humanitarian aid's good.
But I mean, to be fair here, we'll have a guest later, Mr. Eiking, and I'll put this. There are concerns, as you know, about the makeup of the Free Syrian Army as well. Who might be in charge? What forces they're aligned with there as well. Do you have concerns about, the force that's now amalgamated to fight the Assad regime?
I don't know exactly what's happening there. I mean, what could happen? I mean, You know, when this collapses, there could be quite a bit of chaos. There's no doubt about it. But I think we have to be. You know, Canada has always had a good record of. You know, we used to have a democracy institution to help set up democracies and help them go through transition. We're not there, and we don't seem to want to play in that game anymore, which we're really good at. And I think we have to be ready with some assistance to be there when this so-called chaos happens. I mean, there's so much going to be happening. Everything from where's the chemical weapons, what's happening. We're going to have to be there just more with humanitarian aid.
Let me ask Lois Brown on this, because I want to get your reaction to conflicting reports coming out of that region. Speaking of the chaos, AP and Reuters are reporting that Israeli jets destroyed a truck convoy inside the Syrian border with Lebanon. That was believed, according to the reports, to be carrying weapons to Hezbollah. Syrian TV is reporting it was a research center that was hit. Those wire services are reporting that they were carrying Soviet rockets. That could be a quote-unquote a game changer if they were delivered to Hezbollah. Could Israel's involvement impact the alliance between Arab League nations and the West in the region? Any comment from the government on that?
Well, I would say, first of all, Evan, that the possibility of weapons landing in the hands of the wrong people is a concern for all of the international community, and I think that all of us would express that same concern. I think that with these two reports that we've heard today, that we just don't have enough information to comment on that, but our government has always said that Israel does have the right to defend itself.
Maybe so, Paul Dewar. But there might be consequences if indeed this conflict starts to spread. Again, Israel won't confirm this report, so we are just, these are unconfirmed reports coming out yet, and we can't confirm them here at CBC. But is there a fear now that this starts to widen?
Oh, we've been concerned about that from the beginning, as you know, Evan, when it spilled over into Turkey, and had always been concerned that if this spilled over into Lebanon with the alliances between Hezbollah and the regime with Mr. Assad, that this would be, you know, it would be a conflict that would be, you know, spreading beyond our present belief that anyone could even conceive. But here's what I think is important. I want to just go back a second to Mr. Brahimi, the special envoy to Kofi Annan, following Kofi Annan, is that he right now is on the ground, and to the point where what happens after Assad leaves or his regime falls, they're in touch with everyone on the ground right now. That's why we have to stay supportive of the UN mission. And I know it sounds unbelievable that he can achieve a peace, but it's also about understanding who the players are, back to your question, because that's a critical question. We always are concerned after a regime falls, the vacuum, and we've seen it before, be it in Iraq or be it in Libya to some extent. So that's where you need to watch, is to stay. They need to be supported and stay there. If they leave, then we're leaving an entire vacuum. And to your point about what's happened today, it's unconfirmed. But again, these are all the concerns that people have about this conflict spilling beyond the borders of Syria.
Mark Eichen, last word to you. I got about a minute left here. And when you look at what's happening in Syria, you wonder, has there been a shift by the Western allies in a kind of post-Afghanistan world to take a more hands-off, aid-only approach to internal conflict? So here you've got over $1 billion raised internationally for humanitarian aid, but no intervention in a very complicated situation. That would be different from Libya, for example, Mali, for example, Afghanistan. Do you think something's changed here?
Well, definitely this present government's changed. I mean, they have gone, you know, to cutting aid from many of these countries, now coming back with some aid, and really not, you know, putting a shoulder up to democracy and rule of order.
Sorry, I hate to interrupt you. I hate to interrupt you, but you have to distinguish between development aid and humanitarian aid. This is humanitarian aid on this, so it's not. It wouldn't be a aid that came back through development aid. Just to be clear, go ahead.
And I think Canada is one of the worst ones for not coming forward with more than just humanitarian aid. I don't think all these other countries are backing away. I mean, the French is very engaged in Mali. I mean, there's other countries very engaged in Syria. I think we have to work more close with the UN here, and the present government has not been a very good partner with the UN, and many times we should step up to play with them. I just mentioned in the case in The Hague where they should bring the regime forward to the tribunal. There's many things we could be doing besides just humanitarian aid And Canada still has a lot of respect in the world to do that, and we should be stepping up to the plate more.
All right, so some reaction today to the aid announcement in Syria. I just can't stress enough as we watch that situation, the amount of violence still going on in Syria. Lois Brown, Paul Dewar, Mark Eichen, I appreciate your contributions today. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Alan.
Still ahead on Power and Politics, we've got an update for you on the exclusive story we brought to you yesterday about 3 Conservative MPs writing to the Prime Minister to voice concerns over the CNOOC-Nexon deal. How did the opposition react to the news raised in QP today? We'll give you the fallout with Hannah Thibodeau next. Plus, here's a preview of how this story actually did play out in the House. Check it out.